Ninja games were omnipresent in the 80s. Shinobi, Shadow of the Ninja, Ninja Kid, Legend of Kage, TMNT, Ninja Crusaders, and on and on and on. But the top of the heap was undoubtedly Ninja Gaiden. While excellent action platformers in their own right, what really pushed Ninja Gaiden to the top of the food chain was how game-changing the presentation was in these games. They were some of the first of the 8-bit gen that feature cinematics and in-game storytelling. While these may seem quaint by today's standards, even seeing text scroll above letterbox images was leaps beyond the usual sentence thrown at the start of a booklet, not to mention the banger soundtrack and character designs. It's crazy then that side-scrolling Ninja Gaiden never graduated out of the 8-bit era, and it's been 33 years since we've gotten one. In the best example of time being a flat circle, ninjas finally are back in style, and Ninja Gaiden is eyeing that top spot again. Koei Tecmo are giving the granddaddy of badass ninjas its redemption. Ninja Gaiden 4 is on the way, Ninja Gaiden 2 Black got a remake, and finally, a new 2D game is here. But this one isn't being developed internally, as Koei Tecmo have entrusted the IP to the Game Kitchen, the team behind the Blasphemous games. Now, I don't know all the machinations that were at play to get this license into the hands of a small indie dev from Spain, but whoever made it happen deserves a big fat raise, because they absolutely fucking nailed it. Just to get this out of the way at the top, this game is jaw-droppingly beautiful. For my money, Blasphemous 1 and 2 are already two of the best looking pixel art games period, but there was never any doubt that the Game Kitchen would deliver striking visuals with Ragebound, but the Japanese setting really let the art team cook. Every single screen is crammed with detail, making use of high contrast colours and parallax scrolling. Every now and then I would just stop and admire the expertly crafted scenes on display here. Ragebound is a prime example of how the pixel art style can be utilised to look as good or better than even the best looking hand-drawn visuals, and I love that this is a visual language exclusive to gaming. Most importantly though, the graphics keep the action readable. Even though this is the first entry in the franchise in decades, you actually don't play as series protagonist Ryu Hayabusa. Instead, you take control of dual protagonists, Kenji Mozu, a new apprentice of the Hayabusa clan, and Kumori, a kunai-throwing ninja of the Black Spider clan, at first playing as each individually before teaming up together for the majority of the game. The intertwined stories of the two protagonists is fairly simple, but interesting enough to breadcrumb you from one stage to the next, and story sections are presented in a contemporary form of that cinematic letterbox style that made Ninja Gaiden such a standout in the NES era. The action really is the most important thing in Ragebound. It's the centerpiece that everything else revolves around. Where the Blasphemous games went for a weightier, Souls-like style of movement, Ragebound feels kinetic and incisive without losing any sense of power. It's just endlessly satisfying to slice through enemies in a single hit before leaping up walls and hanging off ceilings. The base movement is so slick here, and it allows for more leniency than the original games, but in a way that feels more fun and more controllable. Ragebound does cleverly augment the expected run and slash with new mechanics, but everything here falls back to three core pillars: rhythm, momentum, style. Once the protagonists are paired up together, you start to be able to chain both the throwables of Kumori with the deadly sword swipes of Kenji, and both have the guillotine boost, a game-changing aerial spin move that lets you bounce off nearly any enemy or hazard. That one move is what I use to maintain momentum through the action. Decision making comes from prioritizing and executing on hypercharge attacks, which are powerful versions of basic attacks granted once you kill an enemy with an aura. I've said already that common enemies die in one hit, but throughout each stage there are heavy enemies that block paths, do more damage, and take much more time to kill, unless that is, you have a hypercharge. Every encounter with a heavy enemy will have someone with an aura nearby, so the flow of combat quickly becomes about killing that one first so you can destroy the heavy. The core systems in Ragebound aren't deep, but they are satisfying and do require mechanical skill and some quick thinking to efficiently slash through hordes of enemies in your way. Juggling between your projectiles, guillotine boosts, slashes, and capitalizing on hypercharge opportunities creates an addictive, rhythm-like quality to levels and constantly keeps you on your toes. This is all by design, as to attain higher ranks you need to keep a kill combo going and finish in good time, both of which encourage brutal efficiency and propulsive momentum. Doing so feels badass and looks amazing, to the point that even basic execution looks way more impressive than it really is. By the time you reach credits, you'll be a merciless killing machine. The final piece of the puzzle that allow everything to click together in Ragebound are the levels themselves. When I first saw that the Blasphemous developers were going to be creating an all-new 2D Ninja Gaiden game, my first thoughts were, oh, I bet that'll be sick. And also, I really hope this isn't a Metroidvania. I love the Blasphemous games and I love Metroidvanias, but aside from the space being crowded already, it doesn't play to the strengths of the classic Ninja Gaiden formula. Fortunately, I had absolutely nothing to worry about. The level design in Ragebound only bolsters the best parts of the game. By having set paths with enemies in fixed positions, the game kitchen could build combat scenarios that demand the decision making and reflexes to make an addictive experience. The beauty here is that you don't need to replay levels over and over to crush through them. Instead, you just need to master the flow, though the temptation to replay levels over and over to perfect a slick order of executions is also there. Each stage has its own sense of place and a distinctive visual motif. There is a lot of winding to the level progression with verticality and even some novel stage specific mechanics too. It never really felt like I was totally retreading old ground. Crystal skulls and golden scarab collectibles are hidden throughout each level, sometimes behind breakable walls or at the end of optional challenges. They're currency you use to get new ultimate moves, throwable items and talismans that offer permanent buffs or impediments to tailor the difficulty more. They could have just left these as ways to up your rank, but I appreciate the added customizability. Not only does it make exploring the levels way more worthwhile, but some of the talismans substantially bolster your playstyle, or they add a risk factor if you want more difficulty. And that last point is important, because with checkpoints that refill health and a generous health pool, the core levels of Ragebound aren't very difficult. There is a hard mode here that substantially ramps up that old school challenge, but it's locked behind the completion of the base game, and I think this is one of the only blunders the game really makes, because those that are seeking really NES style difficulty aren't going to get the option until they beat the game first. The one part of the base game that does supply some challenge is the bosses. Here is where Blasphemous's DNA is at its strongest. The bosses in here absolutely will fuck you up, and absolutely require patience and learning their patterns to best them. Blasphemous 2 particularly had a notable boss fight towards the end of that game, and Ragebound definitely echoes that style of challenge. Like the best bosses, once you've done your due diligence, you'll find yourself ruthlessly slicing your way through them in no time. They're an excellent way to cap off a level and they feel great to finally beat. You've been hearing it throughout this video, but I want to finally highlight the music. Composer Sergio De Prado did not need to go as hard as he did here. It is an immediately sicky collection of chiptune bangers that are accented and eventually completely morph into classic heavy metal riffing with soaring guitar leads and thumping rhythms. Like the visuals, there's so much flexibility in setting here that let every idea fly, and that's exactly what happened. From softer traditional Japanese instrumentation to chuggy metal guitars to pulsing synthwave bangers, nearly every track lodged itself into my brain for days after playing. The genius is that the live instrumentation and modern synthesizers dance with the 16-bit chiptune sound fonts rather than just replace them, creating a soundtrack that is very reverent to the origins of the series without being too steeped in its influences. If it's not glaringly obvious by now, I absolutely loved Ninja Gaiden Ragebound. It's a perfect example of how to dip into nostalgia without being a slave to it, and I am loving this trend of giving legendary IP to established indie developers to put their stamp on it. It worked wonders with Streets of Rage 4, Cadence of Hyrule and TMNT Shredder's Revenge, and it works wonderfully with Ragebound. I hope the upcoming Shinobi only continues the trend, and please God, somebody get Konami to give Castlevania to any one of the amazing Metroidvania devs out there. The Game Kitchen understood the assignment, and with Ninja Gaiden 4 on the horizon, it's looking like, even in a stacked year for Ninja games, Ninja Gaiden is finally reclaiming its throne.